Kristen, Karen.
All right.
Hey.
So Sharon, take it away.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I am so happy that you made it this evening. And we are so excited to highlight Kari Kurto from Reading League National. And she is here. She's going to share how she has worked and developed the Reading League Compass, a national scale repository of guidance and resources for administrators, policymakers, and state education agencies, educator preparation programs, and those working on with multilingual learners and educators. Our mission, as always, with the Reading League California is to promote an awareness, understanding, and use of evidence-aligned literacy instructional practices and curriculum in California based on reading science.
Yeah.
And today we have a shared folder. There is a QR code, and I think Leslie dropped it in the chat
Put
as
in the
well.
chat. Let's see if we.
And we're just excited that you all came out tonight to listen to Kari and see what she's going to share. And then, as well as our wonderful Leslie Zaroya, who is a vice president of the Reading League California in charge of events. Leslie, take it away.
Okay, so hi everybody. It's been a long day for everyone, but we so appreciate that you guys come out live and attend our events. It's so fun to get together with like-minded folk and share an hour together to talk about things that matter to us, including what Carrie's going to talk about tonight, this incredible resource. So I turn it over to Carrie, I wanted to just take a minute to talk about a few things that are happening in California with structured literacy. So I am on the state literacy plan committee, and they are rewriting the state literacy plan. They are not being quite as explicit as I would like, but the words California is literacy initiative is steeped in the science of reading is in it. So that's there at least. So we're happy about that. One of the other big initiatives that's happening is AB 1121. And drop a yes in the chat if you've heard about this already. That will help me to know how much to really spend on this. Do you know about AB 1120? Okay, it looks like people. Okay, no, not everybody. Okay, so just briefly, AB 1121 is a bill that has been introduced by Senator or Assemblywoman Rubio again. She was also the lead person last year on AB 2222 that did not make it through committee, primarily because it was very expensive and the budget was super tight. So they have reintroduced the bill. It has a new name and a new number. This one is AB 1121, Early Literacy, Professional Development, and Instructional Materials. And so a copy of this slide deck is in your shared folder, and the actual bill text is in there. Can somebody, Sharon, can you work on muting?
Yes.
So if you need to, if you would like to read the actual text of the bill, you are certainly welcome to do that. However, let me see if I can't do it. I can't mute because I'm not host, so it won't let me. Sorry.
I'm working on it.
Okay. So two things about this bill that you need to know. It's really just two very simple principles. One is around teacher training. So the focus of is that there would be paid professional development to ensure that all California elementary teachers and administrators who provide reading instruction are trained using evidence-based practices. And educators who've already received training, so if you've already gone to letters or you've already had Orton Gillingham or you've been to our training, or you've been to whatever training, then you don't have to retake it. You may opt to retake it, but you will not have to retake it. So if you can show that you've already attended training, you don't have to retake it. But this particular bill ensures that all teachers get offered professional learning from an approved list. And then the second part of the bill is saying that is around instructional materials. This is super important because right now, as we're training educators across the state in structured literacy, we don't have materials in our core adoption that align to the science of reading. And so it's really kind of difficult for folks to, if they haven't adopted supplemental materials yet, to do that work. So this would, in the gist of it is that the State Board of Ed would adopt a new ELA, ELD instructional materials list that aligns with evidence-based means of teaching literacy and the ELA and ELD framework. So they would be LEAs would be required to adopt materials from the state list, but they could request a waiver. So It's a little watered down from AB 2222. It's not as sweeping in scope, but it's a start, and it goes well with the new legislation that's in place around the screener mandate that is taking place right now. People are learning about the screener mandate and selecting their screener that they're going to implement in the fall. So this is really good news, and we are hoping to get a lot of support for this bill. And so
We're doing a lot of work.
I put some, yeah, some resources for you into the shared folder. So one thing that you can do immediately is go to
In the
californiakidsread.org. This is the
folders.
website that has, can you guys make sure that you're muted?
I'm sorry. I
That's
am
okay.
trying to mute
It's not
all.
you. There's a couple people who aren't muted. Thank you so much. Um, California Kids Read is the hub for this bill where all the resources are, and you can join the campaign. You can share a testimony. That is something that is super important. They are really looking for educators who are teaching a structured literacy to share their story. How is it going? What are the benefits that you're seeing? So you can go there and do that. And you can also sign the petition that says, please pass this law so that we can get more paid professional learning and materials in California. So that's the first step that you can take to take action and share it with every single person that you know, so that we can get this passed this time. The next thing that's in your folder are flyers. So EdVoice has shared, and these are also on the californiakidsread.org site. They have shared some interesting statistics in PDF form in two-page flyers around English learners and our African American students and how far behind they are in reading and why and how structured literacy could really support them. And so these are great resources to share with folks in your districts. Please download these and share them with others. And then the last one here on the end, this very long screenshot that I took is a two-pager that just talks generally about the bill and why it's so important. So these are some really good resources that EdVoice has put together in collaboration with Decoding Dyslexia and Families in Schools. And we've been asked to share them, and we're happy to do that because this is sharing the work that we care so deeply about. Okay, so with that, this totally relates to even the bills that we're doing because as you go to select new curriculum, you're going to need some help doing that. And so Kari is an expert in how to do that, and she's got some excellent resources. So I'm going to stop sharing here so that I can turn it over to TRL Nationals Director, Science of Reading Project Director, woo, Kari Kurto. If you don't know her already, she's a person you need to know. Thanks for being here, Carrie. I know it's late for you on the East Coast, so we in California appreciate your time, dedication, and knowledge tonight.
It is dark and cold, and
Yeah.
I do miss living in sunny California. I actually lived in the Los Angeles area for 10 years,
Oh,
and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I missed seasons a lot, but
yeah.
now that I have seasons again, it gets to be about February, March, and you're like, all right, enough.
Yeah, enough
So
season.
yeah, exactly. It's so nice to be here with you all this evening. Thank you for all the incredible work you do in California. It is all so near and dear to my heart. I appreciate you. We appreciate you. Everyone at National appreciates you. You're appreciated, and it takes a league, and you are all wonderful and inspirational educators and humans. So, let me share my screen, and then I will start the little slideshow. And what we're gonna do is, oh, sorry, my little zoomy bar is in the way. Always. Hold on. Move! Sorry, my mouse isn't working. Always at this time,
I
right?
know. Why does it
All right,
always
there we
do
go.
that when you get on Zoom? It's like, oh, come on.
All right, you ready? Here we go. Can you see the first
Yeah,
slide? All
got
right,
it.
fabulous. So that's me. A few weeks ago, I kind of chopped my hair off. It feels good. I highly recommend it. I'm the National Science of Reading Project Director at the Reading League. So what that means is I do a lot of work related to the Reading League Compass. And I also manage the curriculum and navigation report project. I run several communities of practice.
Good.
Sometimes I just feel like I'm generally overall like Science of Reading Central. Like, hi, this is a Science of Reading. How can I help you?
Right?
So it's a really, really fun role. I get to work with incredible people, and I think it's the best job in the world. These are my kiddos. I live in Southern Rhode Island. I love words. This is a picture from Planet Word in Washington, D.C. If you haven't been, you must go. It's
Where
very
is
cool.
that? Where in DC?
It's, I mean, it's like in the thick of it. I don't know DC well, so I wouldn't be able to direct you, but
It's
yeah,
an
it's
outdoor
right
thing
there.
or
And
it's a building you go into?
no, it's a word museum. It's a whole
Way
Oh,
up
building that's
there.
dedicated to words,
She got down
Leslie.
safely a minute ago.
hey, Sarah, can you mute yourself, please? There's a couple people on the call still. Thank you so much. Jane, you're not muted either, and Lynn as well. If you could mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Sorry, Carrie.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, so anyways, I highly recommend if you're in DC.
Okay, I'm
And
going to
I was
DC, so I want to go
the
to
nerd that actually walked up to the director of the museum and was like, "Actually, I found a couple of errors in your presentation."
that. Which I'm
So
sure they
it's
love.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was funny. She was great. And I worked at a high school for students with learning differences called Middlebridge School. It's in a castle on the ocean here in Rhode Island. And the students there taught me so much. I was trained in the Orton Gillingham approach, and the knowledge that I learned through that I had not learned. By the way, I got my master's in education at the University of Southern California, balanced literacy. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Me too.
And I just didn't know, like when I got up in front of the kiddos, I didn't know how to teach them to read. And I got my first job at a school for students with dyslexia. They were all running around, learning from their academic language therapist, talking about macrons and brevs and syllable types. I'm like, what is this magic? So, I got my training from an incredible OG fellow, and with I got muted. There we go, though. Um, and so that's when I began advocating for other educators to be able to be inspired and gain that knowledge to be able to teach their kiddos. So today we are going to talk a little bit about the word evidence. I always start every presentation with this, and you may have seen it before, but I think it's really important just to level set because our collective mission is to advance the awareness, understanding, and use of evidence-aligned reading instruction. So what is it that we mean by evidence? We are going to spend some time first on the curriculum evaluation guidelines, talk a little bit about the adolescent intervention guidelines, and the curriculum navigation reports, and then tie it back to the California context we were just talking about. And then for the last bit of the presentation, I am going to walk you through some of the other pages of the Reading League Compass and a couple of my favorite resources from each of those pages that might be able to help you or others that you know. And please let me know if you have questions. You can raise your hand, or Leslie or Sharon, if you can monitor the chat. I can't see it, but if there's questions, I don't mind being interrupted and answer questions.
Will
I want
do.
this to be applicable to your context
Okay.
and be able to help you with what you actually need. Cool. So we don't need to do the mission again. We've done it twice now. But what does that mean, that word evidence? We're going to turn to the defining guide. Hopefully you all are familiar with this resource. When I was at the Rhode Island Department of Education, I was on the committee to help support the creation of what we called at the time the tiny tangible book. Like, wouldn't it be so great if everybody was just running around this tiny tangible book? And now they are, and it's awesome. There's a wonderful preamble. If you haven't seen Dr. Tracy Weeden read it, it's very inspiring. That just kind of lays the foundation of why we do this work. And we thought it was really important to create a definition of the science of reading. Because again, when I was at RIDE, we had all sorts of PD and programs and for-profit companies coming to the department, coming to our schools and saying, hey, this is a cool new term, this science of reading thing. I guess we're that. We're the science of reading and buy our stuff. And that's not okay. Because as you know, we're talking about a body of knowledge, right? Knowledge that has accumulated over decades from across the world in multiple languages. And so anytime you use the term the science of reading, really think about the fact that you're talking about a body of knowledge, right? Of really knowledge that's that is scientifically based, reliable. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Of course, we have this page that uplifts also what the science of reading is not. You can do a little +1 in the chat if you've ever heard the science of reading called any of these things, right? It's not an ideology or a philosophy, so you can put a little +1 if you've heard that. It's not a fad. Sorry, science has been around and it's hopefully going to stay around. Sorry, there's a lot of subtext there. This is not a new idea, right? I mean, my friend Susan Brady has been working in this field since the 70s and feels like she wants to rip her hair out sometimes, but it is not new. It's not a pendulum swing, although I have to be very, very clear that we're holding the pendulum in our hands if we are working in schools and districts, right? It is up to us to make sure that pendulum does not swing. And that's very important in the efforts of those who are opposed to the science of reading or advocating against some of this legislation, because they do see in some schools and districts that there is now an overemphasis on foundational skills. So we have to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we are looking at all of those critical aspects of literacy that go into building a fully literate little kiddo running around, right? So we're going to talk about that when we go through the curriculum evaluation guidelines. It's not a political agenda. Go ahead and put a +1 if you've heard about that, right? Reading goes across the aisles. Although, some of the more red states are the ones that are passing the legislation. I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, but I'm like the most liberal person in the world, and this is my life. So this is not a political agenda. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach. When I was at NABE last week, I walked up to the CABE table, and I introduced myself, and I was chatting with actually a nice gentleman for a while, and one of the board members came over, and he introduced me in a very collegial way, and I explained my work, and she just looked at me and sneered at me and said, "I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach." And I said, "You know what? Neither do I." Neither, the research does not point to that, and that's not what we're talking about. We all understand the need to use assessment and data to tailor instruction to each child, so it cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. This is not a program of instruction. Although we're going to be talking about the guidelines, this is not just about instructional materials. In fact, at TRL, we consider ourselves to be knowledge brokers, right? Knowledge first and foremost, knowledge construction before instruction. That's my little archerism that I made up.
Put it
And
on a
it's
t-shirt,
not
Carrie.
yeah, right. There you go. Boom. It's not a single specific component of instruction such as phonics. Anybody heard that one before? Yeah. But again, it's up to us to make sure that we are dispelling those myths and really, really digging in on language and writing and everything it takes to develop a critical reader. So, we're going to talk about evidence-aligned components that we're looking for when we talk through the curriculum evaluation guidelines. So, what's the difference between evidence-based and evidence-aligned? Does anybody want to take a stab? Anybody know for sure?
They might not be
So,
present.
that's okay. That's okay. No worries. So, from my understanding, and other folks may have other ideas, but evidence-based is really like, let's take a program. If a program has a study done on the efficacy of that program and they submit it to like a What Works clearinghouse, they may get rejected if it's low quality, or if it's high quality enough, it may get accepted. And is that means that they are an evidence-based program. There is evidence that that program worked for those students in that specific scenario, in that school, with that training, in that environment with those students. There's evidence that this program worked perhaps better than another program that it was being compared to. Okay. Evidence aligned, what we're going to be talking about are those components of literacy are aligned with the evidence of how kids learn to read. Okay, so our curriculum evaluation guidelines really are focused on uplifting those evidence aligned components. So, what are some other industries base their practices on evidence from research? So, we research all the things and then we decide not the program, that's going to work for this specific condition, but what are the things that we need to be successful in this particular field? So let's think about some of these industries, right? Obviously, first and foremost, medical. What would we do if we went into a doctor's office and they're like, we don't base our practices on evidence. We have some theories. And so, we're going to treat you with those theories. Is that a doctor you'd want to go to?
Oh
Right?
my, we use that
No,
medical analogy all the time because that's exactly it. It's like, what if you went in with a broken foot and they treated you for cancer? I mean, we're one of the few kind of industries that
yeah,
does not make the bridge from research to practice as easy as others do, you know?
until now,
Until
right?
now, yes.
Yeah. Pharmaceutical, mental health, automobile safety. Yeah, we're gonna do research. We're gonna use those little crash test dummies. We're gonna make sure that our babies are gonna be safe in the back seat, right? We do the research first, and then we make sure that the practices align with that research. Aerospace, pest control, weather forecasting, environmental management, and nutrition. And I put this last because if you listen to my Science of Reading the podcast with Susan Lambert, I came up with this analogy for her podcast, and I think it works, right? That for all of our food, we have nutrition facts labeled on our food. We want to know what's going into our bodies. We want to know what percentage of the good stuff and the bad stuff is going into our bodies. It helps us understand how to stay healthy. Okay. And so the curriculum evaluation guidelines are like the nutrition facts for our instructional materials. They help to identify, according to research and only research, what those good evidence line components are and what those red flag practices are that we don't want to see in our materials because who has time to dilly-dally and dawdle and waste during a school day? Yeah, nobody? Right. Nobody. Every minute counts, right? So those red flag practices that we're going to talk about are the ones that are counter to the science. They're going to waste your precious instructional time, and it's going to inadvertently leave those babies back that I taught at Middlebridge, right? And not help them become readers until perhaps they meet an educator at a school that costs $90,000 a year when they're 16 years old. And how fair is that? That's a broken system. So, the curriculum evaluation guidelines you can download in several places on the Reading League website. You can go to the readingleague.org/curriculum evaluation guidelines. You can also go to the curriculum decision makers page on the Reading League Compass. They're hyperlinked there, or you could just Google the Reading League curriculum evaluation guidelines and it'll pop up. So I welcome you to download a copy and follow along. I'm going to describe a little bit more about them. But again, if you have questions as I'm going through them, I'm not going to talk through everything, but just a few key components. Just for the sake of time so we can get to other Compass things. But please let me know if you have questions. So what makes the curriculum evaluation guidelines different? So there's other curriculum review resources out there, right? We have Ed Reports, we've got one in Oregon, we've got What Works, Clearinghouse. There are other tools to help understand what some of those good components of instruction are, help us understand in Ed Reports case the alignment to the standards and usability. But what the guidelines do differently is number one, all of these beautiful slides are so delicious to me and probably some of your other nerd burgers out there. This is all scientifically based research, okay? So this in the curriculum in the defining guide, we have a definition of what scientifically based research means, and these meet all of those qualifications, right? It's replicable, it's empirical, it's high quality research or meta-analyses of this research, and all of the components in the guidelines are lifted directly from that research. We had Dr. Doreen Mazie, who is fantastic and brilliant, make sure that all of it is specifically what is found and said in the research. So, That's one thing that makes us different. The other thing is when I was at Ride and we had a high quality curriculum law, just like you guys are going to, hopefully have some guidance around instructional materials if the legislation passes. When you do that, you want to make sure that you're not just looking at what curriculum includes the evidence aligned components because these curricula are huge, right? You can put a yes or a me in the chat if you have one of these huge tier one curricula like interreading or wonders or even amplify, one of these big tier one programs, there's a lot to it. A lot to it. And so if you look through the boxes and boxes of resources, it's likely that you're going to find some really good stuff. But the problem is, in with that good stuff is also a lot of trans fatty acids and whatever the bad stuff of the nutrition guidelines or the nutrition facts are. And so that's why the segs, as we call them, CEGs, uplift the red flag practices first, right? Where are the areas where your curriculum is in need of support? Okay. And even if it has like a minimal red flag, it's okay. You can address that somehow, but it's helpful to know that you need to strengthen that area because we need to look at all components of instruction. Okay, so that's what sets this resource apart and why it's been really useful for several years. It does align with the rope. So we have components for all aspects of language comprehension and word recognition, as well as reading comprehension, writing, and assessment. So it's very comprehensive. And again, the science of reading is not about phonics, so make sure that in your setting, it is not just about phonics. You have to be developing that oral language, especially these days with kids with tablets and screens in front of their faces and their parents with tablets and screens in front of their faces. They are not having the dialogue, right? They're coming to school less and less ready for kindergarten because of the lack of language. So it's really important that we target that language. Let's make little baby word nerds, you know? So this is what the segs look like. Each section begins with non-negotiables. So for example, for word recognition, let's call a spade, right? The science of reading is all about cueing and word recognition, right? But that is the very first component that we want to look for. We want to make sure that the three cueing systems are taught are sorry, it's a red flag if they are taught as decoding strategies as the primary decoding strategy. So if you're reviewing for this, you would look through the curriculum for evidence of the cueing strategies. And if you find them, then that's a red flag. And we do have an aligned workbook and you can rate it a 1 to a 4. Like a 1 meaning there's no evidence, a 2 meaning there's some evidence, a 3 meaning there's a decent amount of evidence, and the 4 meaning like, whoa, Nelly, we are talking about Skippy the Frog all day long. Okay. And the same thing, the other non-negotiables for word recognition. Number 2 is if there's guidance to memorize whole words by sight, right? We don't want to see that whole word approach. And then if the materials don't have a systematic scope and sequence, y'all, that's your backbone, you know? So if you don't have a systematic scope and sequence of, hopefully PA, phonics, and encoding skills that are all systematically aligned, then that's going to be a red flag. Okay. And then underneath we have the practices that are aligned to the science of reading, but that's how the other review resources work. That's boring. We want to look for the red flags. We want to peek under the hood and call out the practices that we can strengthen. Under each component, under the non-negotiables, we then go through and we have components to look for each little sub-skill. So please explore the guidelines, use them in your school to see what might be weak, where you might need additional support. If you're thinking about adoption, you can use it as well. Let's look at some of those language word non-negotiables now. So you can think about in your setting, do you see evidence of this, right? So the first red flag in the non-negotiables section is that the instructional framework is primarily a workshop approach. that emphasizes student choice and implicit, incidental, and embedded learning. That doesn't mean that we can't ever have student choice, right? But that just means that we need to have high expectations of our kids and not just let them choose Captain Underpants every single time. Okay? We all love Captain Underpants and Dogman and Kitty Cat unicorn lady, they're all so sweet and wonderful, but we need to have kids reading a variety of texts, and we need to actually teach them. And it takes more than 5 to 10 minutes of a mini lesson, especially in those early grades, to actually explicitly teach them. Now, some language can and should be learned implicitly, but still, it takes more than just a little baby workshop approach, especially in those earlier grades. Okay. Students are not exposed to rich vocabulary and complex syntax in reading and writing materials. This is huge, 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 right? Why are my double scores going up, but my reading comprehension scores are not? Well, look at this indicator. Are you teaching your kids words? Are you teaching them, discourse and syntax? And the same goes for the rest of these indicators here. Will help with that. If the comprehension activities only focus on assessing whether students understand the content instead of providing scaffolds and support that supports the process of comprehending text, that's a red flag. Our kids need some support, right? Because it's not one size fits all, and some kids need more support than others. If writing is not taught, oh my God, that's a huge red flag. But also, if it's taught separately from reading at all times, writing is such a valuable tool to increase reading comprehension. It is so useful. Write about what you read and not at a surface level. Look deeply. Do it because but so, right? Like, do some strategies that are going to really help the kids dig into the text and write about it. And then finally, this hits on the oral language component. Questioning during read alouds focuses mainly on lower level questioning skills. That's not going to cut it. We want kids to think critically, think deeply. So we want to make sure that they're being asked questions that help them do just that. And in fact, they can even come up with their own questions. We have research to support student-generated questions as well, but that's in one of the sub skills. We also have an assessment section. Right? We want to make sure that our assessment is going to help us understand the full profile of our students. I understand that there may not be time for all of these things, but think about if you can, understand more about how your students are doing in phoneme awareness, in phonics, in decoding, in language, right? Oral reading fluency, in your whole suite of assessments, because we can't just measure whether they're getting A, B, C, or D correct. We got to know why, right? And assessments are the magical sparkles that help us understand that. I am going to give you a little sneak peek of something, and I didn't get permission to do this, so shh. But we are updating a few things in 2025. The first updates are going to go to our review teams for the curriculum navigation reports. But one important update that we are going to add, and you may not get this until later this year because I think we're going to try to put it into like a different digital format that looks prettier and is like something that you can actually interact with. But I want to make sure that I share. This isn't it. No, that's not it. That's not what I wanted to share. Hold on. That's the 2023 one. Is this it? There we go. This is my little drafty one. Okay, so you notice the watermarks. Don't try to take screenshots. I will track you down. A couple of things. For example, this. Oh dear, not that. Oh gosh, wow, that's ugly. This paragraph right here, and I'm gonna read it out loud. And it's underneath the theoretical frameworks. Although word recognition and language comprehension are shown as separate components in these models, that does not mean they should be taught separately. Many elements of instruction, such as morphology and grammar, impact both language comprehension and word comprehension, and the strengthening of either component positively supports the development of the others. Therefore, these components should be integrated with evidence-aligned instruction rather than taught in isolation, like all the time, right? We don't want to all the time teach things in isolation. That's where some of the folks that are pushing back against the science of reading, they're like, look at those strands. Those strands are supposed to be taught separately in early childhood. And I'm sorry, they don't actually sound like that. But, Hollis, I've had this conversation with her and she's like, well, how else do they want me to draw a rope? You know? So just because they're drawn as separately does not mean that you are supposed to teach every strand separately in isolation. Okay. So that's important. I'm also importing this section that's in the intervention evaluation guidelines on some of the aspects we know from the science of learning, and that is looking at the types of practice and seeing how students are able to practice their skills. So, purposeful practice, retrieval practice, spaced, distributive, cumulative practice, interleave practice. If you want this chart right away, it's in the intervention evaluation guidelines on the adolescent literacy, but we will soon have it in the curriculum evaluation guidelines as well. We're also adding an indicator for student interest, right? Especially our older students, we do want these materials to be interesting. We put another one in on cohesion, right? We don't want to see it disjointed. That's what we were talking about before, and judging it for usability. Other than that, there's a few tweaks here and there. Our copy editor was really happy and also miserable because she spent about a month just looking at it through APA alignment. We did make this a little bit less vague when it came to phonological and phoneme awareness, just because some publishers have really kind of gone with the wind on this one. And they have kids doing like phonological awareness activities through first grade where they're manipulating onset and rhyme, and that's not what anybody intended. And so we do focus more on phoneme level activities in this version of the curriculum evaluation guidelines. So hopefully we'll have that for you in 2025. If anybody has questions on that, you can let me know. But those are the major changes. Okay, now don't tell anyone I showed you that. Um, all
Oh, we
right.
promise. We won't tell anybody.
Just kidding. They won't care.
When are you thinking that's going to be like fully published? Like summer?
I can't commit to that because it's actually now that this part is done, it's going to be out of my hands and it's up to designers and
Right.
Brandy basically who's going to be deciding what that format's going to look like and how long it'll take to get
Okay.
transferred.
Keep
So
us posted because in California we really need a supplemental materials and the evaluation criteria is so great that we want to get it into everyone's hands.
yeah, so just about everything is the same, like I said, except some wording tweaks, and then the addition of that practice components and the guidance. Just make sure that things are not done in isolation. Look at it as a whole, holistic um, curriculum. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, cool. The guidelines are great. They've been around for a while. A piece of feedback that we heard is that it's hard to evaluate a whole curriculum. And people were asking years ago of the Reading League, even before I joined, when's the Reading League going to evaluate curriculum? I'm like, no, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to get involved in that, blah, blah. And then the more people asked, and so we were like, all right, let's do a pilot. Let's see if we can do this in a fair and unbiased way that just generates informational reports. Let's do an inter-rater reliability study. Let's talk to some lawyers, right? We did a lot of homework and we found that, like, yeah, actually, I think we can do this. I think we can use the expertise of the folks that we know, and we can use the curriculum evaluation guidelines that we're really confident in, and we can evaluate curriculum for their alignment to the research, and help to uplift some of those practices. And so, oh gosh, it feels like it was 10 years ago, but I think it was just 2 years ago that we began this journey. And we now have, I'm actually going to cheat and I'm going to go over to Compass. Um, oh, now, and I'm going to show you live on the Compass page. Curriculum, sorry. Oh my gosh, sorry. I can't type. Curriculum decision makers page of the Reading League Compass. We now have, I think, 13 reports because we just posted a new one today. It hasn't gone out on social media, so y'all are some of the first people to see that we just posted UFly today. a few hours ago. So we have eFly. It's actually the first time I just saw it on the website. Oh, it looks so good. And we have 13 curriculum navigation reports now. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Yes. With three more to come this year and hopefully another 10 next year. And these reports, well, let's just see how eFly looks. If you click on them, you can see the publisher's response underneath, but each report aligns directly with the curriculum evaluation guidelines. Oh, I need to hurry up and talk a little bit more quickly. And it will actually tell you which areas have red flags that could use a little bit more attention, and which areas are aligned to the research and why. We have specific pages and wording from the materials, and this is all informational for you guys to look and understand the materials better. Okay. All right, let me boogie past that a little bit. So I do want to get to some of the other pages. So we've got the navigation reports. These are what I was referring to earlier, the adolescent reading intervention evaluation guidelines. These are on the adolescent literacy page of the Reading League Compass. And these are going to be helpful if you're working with middle and high school students. This is one of the most important aspects of literacy for older students, and this comes directly from Sharon Vaughn. Intervention programs alone cannot remedy reading problems for older students. A school-wide systemic approach, including all content area teachers as literacy teachers, is necessary. Although it takes additional time when the intervention and the content, whatever it says, I can't see it, something in the content aligned across years of instruction, student achievement is accelerated. That is really, really important, right? And it's really hard to get across. It's hard to sell a math teacher that they need to be a literacy teacher, but just start with one thing, right? Start with one vocabulary routine or comprehension routine or an understanding of morphology or how to write a good sentence, right? Start with one thing to try to get the school all rowing in the same direction. It's the same structure, but some of the things are different, right? For older students, we really do need to see more of those high interest motivating texts. And we want to see things like stretch texts. And we don't have as much time unless this is a student with significant dyslexia, or that's really struggling at the word level. There's less time on those word recognition skills, so we want to, focus on things like multisyllabic word reading strategies. Also, for our older students, this flow chart is from Joan Sedita. I love her. She's so generous with her time and her resources. She helped out so much with this, and this is her flow chart, but it has to all start with assessment. You have to figure out what the kiddo needs more than ever in middle and high school. Okay, so tying it back to California, this legislation is for paid PD and perhaps for the adoption of instructional materials. So when you're thinking about, not that you're making the decision of the approved list, but perhaps there is an approved list that's published, use the guidelines to make sure that the criteria that they're using to look for the approved list is actually aligned with the research, because use Rhode Island as a cautionary tale. We went with just ed reports, and there are some really bad curricula in our schools, and kids aren't learning to read, right? And then folks are going to blame the science of reading. So be critical, right? Use these tools to your advantage now and in the future. And I just wanted to share a little bit of what I have learned over the past couple of days from some of the folks that are providing a lot of the pushback, which is the Californians Together, CABE, and some of the multilingual advocates. These are some slides from NABE, and they're really pitching that the science of reading is about this narrowed view of becoming literate. So if you have stories of how your school is not doing that, go to that website that Leslie shared. Tell your story. It is so necessary right now to combat this idea that the science of reading is only about phonics and that we don't care about writing or critical thinking or oracy, right? It's baloney. So we need to tell them why. And they're even talking about, Law versus Nichols, and how there's, this one size fits all approach and we're breaking the law. I mean, it's bad. And they are saying it's not a comprehensive content-rich curriculum. Let's prove them wrong, right? And perhaps your pendulum has swung in the school, so make sure that it doesn't become this caricaturization. Okay. The CalTOG webinar, I was really disappointed because these are some of my friends. We wrote the joint statement together. And they basically were saying the same thing, that this is the science of reading is the reason for the narrowing of curriculum, the removal of ELD time. They even went so far as to say teachers were crying, saying it took the joy of teaching away and it caused children to hate books. So if you've got some joyful learners that love learning to read, please share your stories. Ask your friends, your colleagues to share their stories. We need them now. Please, please, please. Also, their study included 77 participants from across the US, and those participants that they recruited had previously attended webinars that they had hosted and meetings. And so you think there's a little level of bias there, right? But this is what you're up against. They're tied closely with the legislature. So, help the legal folks out, share your stories. You could do so anonymously, but we really need them, right? And also think about whether any of that is based in truth. And if it is, then there's always a course for self-correction. Okay. Do we have a few minutes to talk through Compass?
We certainly do. We have another, I'd say
Cool.
10 minutes.
All right, great. Are there any questions? I see like a little fi number 50 in the chat. Were there any questions I should address before we move on?
I have not seen any specific questions. I've been keeping
Cool.
track, but yeah, so we'll at the end, if anybody has questions, we'll.
Sounds good. So we'll start with policymakers. This page is cool. It's got a lot of information with recommendations for policy. Again, that it has to be comprehensive. We can't just, ban queuing and call it a day. It has to be funded, and it's got some other advice. But this map is cool if you're curious what's going around on around the country. Which states have guidance for early screening? And you click that, and then, actually most of them. Sorry, my kiddos are yelling at each other. Um, if you're curious which states have early screening and an approved curriculum list, you can click on that. And each state has an information page that you can click on, and and you can see the information of what's going on in their state. It's only as good as the state DOE folks that are, my friends made them out to be. I didn't curate this information, they did, because it's better just from the horse's mouth. But that is kind of a cool thing to poke around if you're curious about what's going on across the country. There is a mega menu, but the Zoom bar is forever in my way. There we go. Educators and specialists. I'm actually not going to just show, well, actually I am because I want to highlight one thing. So this is the educators and specialists page, and it's fun because this is all the little goodies and the tabs that you all have open all the time on your screen. And one thing, if you haven't seen it, that's kind of cool, is a project that I did with Hollis. It took us 2 years to do a 10-minute video. Love her so much. She's very by the books. Um, so this is kind of cool because there's a PDF and a 10-minute video of her explaining the rope and why it's the components that are there and why it doesn't include things like cognitive functions and whatnot. And it's a really interesting watch. So I would recommend checking that out. And it's Hollis's voice with the slides. It's very like not like my marketing person was like, "Oh my God, we're really putting this up there." I was like, "Yes," because it's Hollis Scarborough.
Right?
So
She's the
it's the
goat.
only way that she would agree to do it.
Yeah.
So yes. Our educator preparation programs, if y'all work in ed prep, there's some really great resources there for syllabi refinement. We actually have a contracting service. I don't know if you guys even know about this. It's very small right now. We're hoping to grow it, but we have 3 contractors that have gone to colleges and universities, and they help them to kind of define what they want their pre-service educators to graduate with the knowledge and practice of and backwards map from there. They identify gaps and redundancies related to content that is aligned to the science of reading and help them patch the holes and, and pave over the redundancies. And it's a cool service. I'm going to be in Oakland talking about it later in March, in like March 13th with Fulcrum.
Mm.
So we have a page for administrators that helps folks understand, like Sharon, that I see you. I didn't even say your name, and you're like, woo. There she is, ladies and gentlemen, front and center, baby. It helps them understand that you can't buy the science of reading. You can't just purchase a curriculum and you're done, right? Low-hanging fruit. It takes understanding hiring practices and evaluating and selecting a program, coaching, MTSS, assessment. Did I mention coaching? Implementation, coaching, right? And we have content for administrators to understand all of that. Our page, so let's spend a little bit of time here because again, I've done a lot of work, a lot of sweat equity going into this page here with our friends at CalTog that are now kind of going back on their word. That's okay. High road,
No, it's not.
taking the high road. No, it's not. I did write a spicy email. I told them earlier, but I have always tried to take the high road and uplift their voices and their concerns. But we have some videos on prior Reading League summits. But basically, we spent a good 2 years chatting with NCEL folks, understanding one another, asking and answering questions, and eventually putting together these summits. And we now have the videos linked from those summits, and they're very powerful videos to watch. We also have the joint statement linked here in English and in Spanish, where, everybody agrees that we should listen to the body of knowledge called the science of reading, and sometimes there are issues in implementation.
Mhm.
Okay. We did not call some of those issues killing the joy of teaching, right? So
No.
they're going way above and beyond now, and it's really disappointing. But you can call them out and say, hey, listen, you agreed to all these things, and these are the things that we're actually doing, right? Maybe we're not so evil, and also we're teaching kids how to read, and it's working. So, especially if you have English learners, and your practices are effective, we would love to hear those stories. I'm happy to highlight those stories. You can write a little blog. I'll put it on Compass. Like, just let's do this. Let's keep getting that
Totally.
good news out there. Um,
Terry,
we
quick
also, yeah,
question. Aaron wants to know which tab was the Hollis video on again?
mm, educators and
Oh
specialists.
yeah,
It's under
education specialist.
the research.
Okay.
Yep. This is a great place to start if you haven't read research on supporting multilingual learners. It's the National Literacy Panel, and it wasn't available online at no cost, so we bought the rights to it for a couple of years. So you can download the executive summary here. And there's also linked, oh my gosh, wait, there's no research on how English learners learn to read. Oh, there's some right there. There's also a lot more, but that's just what I put up, and I need to add more, but I haven't yet. Um, and lots of other really helpful resources. Linnea, oh my gosh, like I get to email back and forth with Linnea Airy, which is amazing, but her emails could be like Pulitzer Prize winners. Like this was just an email that she sent to me. I'm like, can I post this on the webpage? It's amazing. Talking about the role of meaning in word retrieval in full sight word recognition, not in orthographic mapping. Meaning doesn't exist, like it doesn't affect orthographic mapping phonemes and graphemes, but it does support that final sight word recognition if you know the meaning of the word. So integrate the meaning of the words whenever you can. Okay, especially for English learners. We also have this is the adolescent literacy page, and I'll just share. There's a lot of great resources. If you go down here, this is where the adolescent reading intervention evaluation guidelines exist. And then we have sections on kids that need help with decoding, kids that need help with language, adolescent learners. We do have several of the IES practice guides linked. We have a folder with the rest of them just in case. Um, but we've got resources from other states. And lots of great things to support our older struggling readers. And then we have this is our newest page here, is we have a page now for families and
Oh,
caregivers. Um,
nice.
And we have a couple of cool resources here. I mean, they're all cool because, I put them there. Um, but just parent introductions about what is the science of reading. We put language first because oftentimes this is what folks are most familiar with, especially this is going to be a new audience for us, but especially pediatricians, right?
Mm,
They know the importance of language. And
mm.
so we put that first, to like, oh yeah, okay, all right, we know, yeah, okay, we know we need to develop language. And then we talk about like, hey, language isn't actually the only thing. It's also really helpful to know about letter names and letter sounds. And here's some games and resources to help to promote pre-decoding skills with your early readers. We also have a section on reading buddies, which is, if you don't know about it, it's the Reading League's TV show on YouTube. It's really cute. Great to put on during those like indoor recess days that you all never have in California because your weather is perfect. But that's something we have to grapple with. This here, I just put this up here. This is really cool. It's almost like a curriculum for parents. It's Katie Pace Miles, who's just one of the most brilliant humans on the face of the planet. Linnea Airy in her keynote called her protege. I was like, girl, how does that feel? She's
Yeah,
like, oh my
right?
God, I cried. But this is a great resource here. So check this out. And then, what to look for in elementary instruction and assessment, a little information on the three cueing approach because they might have heard about it from Sold a Story and want to know more. By the way, a new episode came out last week. It's
Yeah.
really good. There's going to be another one next week, and there's going to be another one on March 6th featuring yours truly. So
Nice.
that's pretty
Oh,
cool. Yeah, Chris Peak is sending a photographer to Rhode Island next week to take a portrait. It's awkward and weird for a nerd like me, but cool. So check that out. And then a section for dyslexia and developmental developmental language disorder, um, and so on. There
Carrie,
was
this
one
is
other thing I wanted
amazing.
to point out.
I can't even
This is
believe
really
how many
cool.
more resources are there than the last time I looked.
I
Look at this.
know.
You know. So check this out though, partnering with pediatricians. We just posted this and it's not super widely known, but we're recommending all parents and families and caregivers print the sucker out, hand it to the pediatricians, say, hey, this is really good advice that's grounded in research. Please hang it up on the cabinets in your rooms, okay?
Good idea.
Read together, focus on oral language. Build knowledge, teach letters and sounds, sound out simple words, check out reading buddies, check out the families and caregivers page. So our hope is that this will go up next to the reach out and read posters. I'm also hopefully, if I have time this year, my focus is on a couple of pages, and I'll let you know off the record that one of the pages is going to be for pediatricians. So I just think it's a huge untapped audience that families go to, and it's really important. So, all right, my Zoom bar, guess what, is in the way again. So I'm going to go to this tab.
Okay, we're
Oh,
at
good.
5:57, Carrie, and
Okay,
we have to
I'm
do
going to
a
stop.
screenshot so that we can do a shout out to all our friends who attended tonight and our exceptional Carrie, who has built this. Oh my God, just such an amazing resource. And I can't thank you enough for coming so late in the night to share this with us because I hadn't seen it in a while and there's so much more there than the last time I looked. So I'm super excited. So let's do a quick, Tirith, you want to do it? Okay, everybody turn your camera on real quick so Tirith can take a quick screenshot for social media. We want to be promoting the times that we are together and doing this work so that other people can learn about it and join and be
Thank you,
part of it.
Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? One, two, everybody smile. Okay, you got it? Okay, great. Thank you. Carrie, you are
Yay.
just the awesomest girl, and I want to be your word nerd pal. I'll be a word nerd burger with you.
We'll
And
talk morphemes.
when I come to Scripps National Spelling Bee in May, I'm going to go to the Word Museum. I already sent an email to my professor and said,
Are
"Hey,
you
we're going to the
going to
Word
the
Museum."
spelling bee?
Yeah,
That sounds so fun.
yeah, so
Cool.
cool. So anyway, you are just amazing. Let me just close out with a couple of slides of resources for folks before we go tonight. I know it's late but I just want to share a couple of things with people before we go. So this is regarding the universal screener that's happening, the law that's already passed in California and that is set to be implemented in fall of 25-26. And everyone has to have selected their screener by June 30 and have it board approved. So I want to share just a couple of resources for if you have not been able to attend something to learn more about the screener, how you can do that. So first is this amazing graphic. It's in your folder. I love this. It's got the whole timeline and just a very simple step-by-step way to get information about the screener. So feel free to, you can grab it from the shared folder and you can click on these QR codes to get more info. We at LACO have been hosting overviews, and we did one this week on Tuesday, and we have another one on March 25th and April 4th. So that flyer's in there if you want to come and learn about that. We're also doing overviews of all the programs that are the screeners that are the 4 screeners that are adopted. So if you haven't had a chance to go and hear from them, you are welcome to come to our session. These are all free. So these flyers are also in your shared folder. Riverside County Office of Education is also doing a screener training, and there's a registration links that you can tend to there. And then CDE has recordings, and if some of these have passed already, they all have recordings. You can still register and get the recording of it. So CDE has a whole Padlet of resources that you can go. You can scan this QR code. This is in your folder. The slides are in your folder so that you can scan that and get this Padlet on all the resources. So these are information sessions that already took place from Project Arise, which is a big literacy project in California. And so this lovely one pager has everything linked here, the session slides, the recordings, the websites, information flyers. So if you'd rather just kind of get the down and dirty, you can go there and get that. And then SCOE and Glean have been also doing many webinars on it as well. The next one looks like it's coming up tomorrow at 3:30. And then there's one on March 20th and April 24th. So there's another opportunity. So the reason I share all of these is because they're all at different times and in different places, but they're sharing very similar information. So if you can't get it one place, you can go somewhere else to get it. And everyone has been so great about sharing recordings and things like that. So here's another one from Go Public Schools. The session recordings are there. Those have already taken place. So that is it for the screener. So reach out to us if we can support you with the screener. We know that up and down the state, we're trying to create some resources that help folks collectively. Our next meeting as a group, as a TRL group, California group, is our membership meeting on March 11th from 6 to 7, back to our later time in the evening. So feel free to come and hear about Project Read AI. They're going to do a short presentation at that membership meeting and share some resources with you. If you don't know about Project Read AI, you got to come and learn. I love this group. There's such amazing resources for teachers there. So come, don't miss that. And then our next big event is with Dr. Sharon Vaughn on April 10th. That's coming up, so you can sign up for that as well. And then, as always, if you're not a member, share this with other folks. Have more folks in your sphere. Join TRL California. Hey, there's a little human there with Kari.
So cute.
My son just put Figment on my shoulder.
I see that. Hello. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for taking your time. Kari, we love you so much. Thank you for all your hard work on behalf of everybody in the country trying to.
Yes.
Oh, I love you all back. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you do.
All right, thanks
Thank you.
everyone. We'll see you next time.
Never forget your imagination.
Oh,
All
thanks so
right.
much.
All right, Kari. Thank you. Stop the recording.